Hi, this is Leadership and Team Simulation, Everest V3. This is Group 2. My name is Mara Fisher, and I'm worked alongside Jaren Garcia, JC Napierski, Matt Szymanowski, Jerry Riggins, and Andy Zhang. Hi, my name is Mara Fisher. I was the group leader in the Everest simulation. As the group leader, I had already summited Everest 5 times and also climbed peaks of over 8,000 meters 14 times also, so I'm a pretty experienced climber. As the group leader, it was an absolutely critical role. It was involved in decision making, making sure that the team could eventually get to the summit, but it wasn't just about the summit, it was making sure that we were all hitting our personal goals and getting through along the way. So one of my main responsibilities was decision making. Every day on the mountain brought different challenges, whether that's altitude sickness, bad weather, exhaustion. And as a team, we needed to decide whether the team pushed forward, take a rest day, or turn back even. These decisions weren't being made lightly because they didn't just impact any individual role, but the entire group's success and safety. One of the aspects of my role was to get the photographer to get content of me for a brand sponsorship where I would be paid $1 million. However, our photographer unfortunately was not present for the simulation, so that offset my personal goals and also some of the other members' goals to be able to get all of the members to different places. I was able to reach the summit and also avoid being rescued. Another big part of the role was resource management. So oxygen, food, and medical supplies were limited, so it was my job to make sure that we were using them effectively. That meant spreading tasks evenly so nobody was burning out too quickly, getting medicine to the right person at the right time, and also always keeping track of what was remaining. Risk management was also always on my mind. The mountain was unpredictable, and it was my responsibility to be able to monitor those weather conditions, watch for signs of altitude sickness, and balance the drive to the summit with the need to stay safe. And from this experience, I've learned that good leadership is about balance, being able to balance ambition with safety, strategy with flexibility, and authority with teamwork. A strong leader doesn't just give orders, but they adapt, listen, and make choices that give the entire team the best chance of success.
So for our group simulation, I was the marathon runner, and my primary job was to predict the weather every day. So as a marathon runner, I was very conditioned and very ready to take something like this on. Said that I had won multiple different marathons across the world, so that's pretty good. But I also had asthma, and that didn't affect my marathon running, but it could eventually impact me when you come to like higher elevations. So that's why my role was to predict the weather so that I could know how that would affect me, and then obviously how the conditions would affect everybody else around me. Throughout the simulation, I correctly predicted the weather every single day based off the information that was given to me from the simulation and based on certain calculations that we had to make along the way. I worked with the team to supply needs based on the weather conditions, so based on what certain people needed, based on how I knew my health was. I actually didn't take any sort of supplies up until like the last day when we each took one specific item, and then I got the inhaler because I had asthma. But any other point, I didn't use anything else because my health was still good enough at that point. At one point, my mental fatigue went down, but that was about it. Unfortunately, I did fail to reach the summit. Not 1,000% sure why. I guess maybe my health just really decreased because of the quick drop in the temperatures reaching that summit. But that was an overall good experience that we had through the simulation.
For the simulation, I played the role of the environmentalist on the Everest expedition. I was Italy's most accomplished mountaineer, and I had previously summited Mount Everest twice. I did experience acute mountain sickness on my last Himalayan expedition, so I knew that that would be a little bit of a tricky situation on this expedition. My health overall was pretty weak throughout my time on the mountain. I used 2 days worth of water supplies, and I also used the medication to treat acute mountain sickness. On day 4, I did have an asthma attack, and on day 6, I was in critical condition, so I decided to remain at Camp 4. While I did not reach the summit, I still achieved my personal goals. My personal goals were to stay at Camp 4 an extra day so that I could gather and remove garbage, and then also to avoid rescue. So I was able to avoid rescue, and I was able to also stay at Camp 4 an extra day so that I could assemble the garbage for cleanup. And my successful cleanup would lead to a major grant that I would get for a 10-year project to restore a polluted river in Italy. So personally, this was a huge goal that I reached for myself. I did have a hard time on the mountain with my health, and this kind of, led my group to have conversations and communicate about what supplies I needed versus what other people needed. We were able to kind of decide whenever I should go on versus whenever I should stay. And I think that even though I did not get to reach the top of the mountain, we learned a lot of good communication aspects, and that this simulation really enforced Dudley's leadership point that leadership is measured by your impact, not about your position. And I think that my team was able to do that through our communication and a lot of the cleanup efforts that I was able to do by staying at Camp for an extra day.
My name's Andy, and in the simulation, I was a physician and a professor at a major medical school. My publications have appeared on top medical journals. I have climbed Denali, the highest peak in North America, and the highest peak in South America, so I have had some experience in climbing. However, I have never climbed 8,000 meter peak before. I'm going to Mount Everest as part of my research, and I would like to see how people adjust as they sleep and rest at particular altitudes. As a physician, I am able to provide medical treatment to my teammates. I can only provide assistance to one team member per day and must be at the same camp as the team member that I am training. It was important that my teammates told me the health conditions and kept me updated on if anything severe was happening, as I was only able to assist one team member a day. As a physician, I carried altitude sickness medicine, a gamma bag, 2 inhalers, and extra water. Later on, I was one of 2 to carry 5 oxygen canisters because we thought it was important for the physician to stay healthy. As a result, my hiking speed was the slowest out of all my teammates. When nobody was at risk, I issued water to one of the team members that it may help with overall health. On day 3, we decided to provide the environmentalist with altitude sickness medicine because her health seemed to be the weakest at that point. On the last day, we decided to provide the marathon runner with an inhaler due to him having asthma. My health was strong until about day 5 is when it started to decrease. On the final day, when I reached the summit, which I was one of 2 to do so, and it was one of my challenges, my overall health was at risk, and so was my altitude sickness. My frostbite risk was not severe, which earned me points as one of my challenges. I was also not rescued at any point, and we were all able to spend an extra day at a camp together. Therefore, I was able to complete all of my challenges, just not any of the bonus challenges.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jaron Garcia, and I was part of Group 2 in the Everest simulation. As you can see on the slide, I was the team observer. So despite everybody having pretty involved roles within the simulation, the team observer actually did not. My role pretty much was me being a mimic of the leader, mirroring what the leader was seeing, what decisions they were making. So it allowed very little involvement in the actual simulation decision making. Despite that, though, I was still very impactful in the real world sense. I wasn't predicting the weather. I wasn't handing out supplies. I wasn't making those day-to-day decisions, but I was very impactful with my voice. That's why I chose to write. Your voice matters. You can be impactful with your voice. And that's probably what I took most from this simulation was, despite the fact that I wasn't involved on the actual website in the simulation and being able to make decisions every single day, I took the opportunity to speak up every single time that I had something to say, every single time that I wanted to be involved in the decision-making. Even if you're someone in the real world who's at the bottom of the poll and you can't be involved in decision making, you can still speak up, you can still get your point across. And for me, I was doing that in the sense that I was quick to pay close attention on how my health was doing, how the simulation was going, what day we were on, what was all in the day description, asking others how they were doing, what their health looked like, what supplies we still had left, all of that, what decisions they needed to make for the day so that I could put my input out there, put out what I was interested in doing and my decision making. Despite the fact that I didn't have score calculations based off of what I could be doing for the day or even allowed to make decisions, I was that mimic, that mirror of the leader, but was still very impactful with my voice.
Again, from Group 2 and our Everest simulation, I'm going to be summarizing everybody's group's thoughts and takes from the Everest simulation, what we took from this, what we think we can improve on, what we think we did really well with, and what were some of our limitations. I want to start with, we did do this over Google Meet. That was something that was immediately highlighted by each and every one of us, that it would have been much easier project in person. Oftentimes in the real world, you're seeing people that are dealing with projects in the office or on the road, and they're doing stuff as a team. The Google Meet has become way more popular, especially since COVID. Zoom have all become really popular, and you have really had to start to adapt to doing projects and doing your work away from each other. But something that we definitely came up with was that it would have been way easier in person. There were just some limitations with muting and unmuting, we couldn't see each other's screens. So when one person was describing something, maybe there was some confusion because we didn't necessarily see that on our screen, especially with the tasks. And every single person had that different day description. So maybe on day 3, when JC's character was dealing with different symptoms, we couldn't necessarily understand what she was talking about, or we couldn't see her description to say, hey, maybe we need to give her this medication, maybe we need to give her this. So there was a lot of discussion that happened. We tried our best to voice each of what we were each trying to get across over the Google Meet, but that was definitely one limitation. Another limitation was we had one of our roles missing, the photographer. Unfortunately, Jerry could not make it to the Zoom meeting as he had practice to our Google Meet and could not make it for the simulation, so we were missing the photographer. So every single time that we had to make a decision and move on to the next day, we were lacking the photographer, and for different scoring and being able to take that final photo at the top that was for the leaders scoring, we could not do because Jerry's character had to be rescued as they were I believe it was frostbite. They were brought back to the base camp as they had to be rescued, as he wasn't able to make any decisions. That definitely did limit us. We didn't know what he was going through, what his health looked like, what different goals he needed to have, what his decision for the day was. That was definitely very limiting. There were some confusion on unknown items. We did not know the medications or the gamma bags for mountain sickness. And hiking, we were not really familiar with anything. That also goes into our unfamiliar with the experience. Obviously, when we all talked about it, none of us had climbed Mount Everest before. None of us actually had any experience hiking a mountain, and that unfamiliarity with the experience definitely would have swayed some of our perspective on what decisions to make and what to do best, and when to hand out the supplies even sooner. If we had known what the actual experience was like, if we had ever been hiking before, if we had ever dealt with hiking mountain sickness. So there was that also goes into being more difficult to plan. It was difficult to plan as we really did not know what was going to be ahead of us. We knew the days. We kind of knew what each of our roles were. We didn't have too much description on those, so that was something that it was really difficult to plan. Should we have taken more time to plan? All of us agreed we probably should have taken more time to plan. We kind of jumped right into it to see what day 1 would look like, to try to then start our planning on day 1. We weren't able to really plan on what roles, what our goals were, how we would each execute that, how we would go about who's going to talk and all of that. We kind of had, it was a little disorganized with the planning process, so we kind of jumped right into it, and we all did definitely agree that we should have planned a little bit more. But it was very difficult to plan for because none of us had that experience before of climbing a mountain and going through any of these simulations. We definitely needed to be, lastly, we all definitely agreed on that we needed to be more detailed. There were certain things that they hid in there, like JC having a history of mountain sickness and needing the inhaler, and how someone on the team had asthma. Those kinds of things were hidden in those day descriptions and in our characters' roles, and we were not necessarily always detailed enough to go through in those entire readings, making sure, hey, what does yours say? Asking each other, hearing each other's perspectives, and wanting to know what was going on. So that definitely swayed our results, and that was something that we definitely talked about we needed to improve on if we were to get another chance at this, as we definitely weren't detailed enough and looking for some of those clues that you were missing, in a sense, of what everybody else was dealing with. And that kind of played into the, hey, we were on Google Meet, we couldn't read each other's screens, we couldn't see what each person was dealing with. So we definitely need to be more detailed in that. And these were kind of some of the things that we took away from it, and things that we could have improved on as a group.